Okay, fantastic. All right, so let's see. So we're going to talk about skill building for success today. And I'd like to just start by getting to know a little bit about each of you. Oh, they told me not to move. I'd like to start by getting to know a little bit about each of you. So by a show of hands, how many of you are current students? Okay, so we've got a good amount of current students. And how many of you are current faculty? Oh, we've got a good amount of current faculty. Fantastic. How many of you are practitioners outside of academia? Oh, we've got diversity in the room. Nice. Okay. How many of you identify as anthropologists in your day-to-day life? Okay. How many of you identify as something other than anthropologists in your day-to-day life, like UX researcher, market researcher, project manager? Okay, well, you don't have to be shy. You can raise your hands high. Be proud of whatever you claim. Okay. How many of you live in the New York City metro area? Okay, about half. How many of you traveled from outside of New York? And those of you who traveled from other places, just shout out, what are some of the places you came from so I have an idea?
Florida.
Florida, okay. Rhode Island?
New Jersey.
New Jersey, okay.
Vancouver, BC.
I'm sorry?
Vancouver.
Oh, Vancouver. Oh, Vancouver's gorgeous. Very nice, okay. Connecticut, okay. Anyone else?
DC.
DC, okay, fantastic. All right, so just to share a little bit with you about myself, and my colleague was supposed to be here today. She is very, very sick. So I am gonna cover both her content and mine. But a little bit about me. My name is McDonald. I am a researcher. I've been a researcher. It feels so weird to say this, for 27 years, you guys. I've been researching. I am both an anthropologist and a market researcher. I spent about 2 decades of my career working at Fortune 500s, and I fielded research on 6 continents around the world. Several years ago, about 6 years ago, I opened my own research consulting firm. Thank you. And we do work with both multinational corporations and nonprofits. We try to very diligently split our work. So our work is not only about building business, but doing work for positive social impact as well. And we still do work across continents. In fact, we just finished a large project on 4 continents 8 weeks ago. My partner, or my former colleague and dear friend, Sherrell Honoré, has over a decade worth of experience at Fortune 500s. Her background is in market research as well, but the terminology that's often used is consumer insights, shopper insights, and analytics. Those are common terms if you're in industry. And her career has been at Fortune 500s as well. Her background is in marketing, whereas my background is in theoretical mathematics, Spanish, and sociocultural anthropology. Any questions? Okay. So let's just start with a little bit of contextual grounding. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because Elizabeth talked about it earlier. You know, the reality is that more and more of us as anthropologists are pursuing careers outside of academia. And so with that, there's certain skill sets that are required for successful career progression. And we're going to talk about those today. Now, there's a wide range of these skills. They include risk-taking, being solutions-oriented, a drive for results, and functional mastery. Does anyone know what functional mastery means? Okay, so I'm going to explain. If there are terms that I use today that aren't clear, please just raise your hand because I've been working for a really long time. So there are terms that are natural to me, but stop me. Functional mastery refers to literally the proficiency in a certain research area. So, for example, if you are in market research, one area of functional mastery is advertising testing. If you are in UX, it would be a different type of functional mastery, specifically looking at observational user experience. So functional mastery is how proficient are you in those specific research methodologies, okay? Today, though, we're going to talk about just 3 things: executive presence, project management, and qualitative research interviewing. That's where we're going to focus today. So let's begin with some terminology. Executive presence, what does it mean? What are your thoughts? When you hear executive presence, what exactly does that mean?
I would say you have like strong leadership skills, like if someone has a question, they feel comfortable going to you and like having a dialogue to figure it out.
Okay, people being comfortable coming to you, leadership. Okay, what else? Good.
A lot of specialized expertise in working with other people or different complex.
Okay, so expertise, working with other people. Yes.
It's just sometimes just the way you give up. It's how you appear to others, whether or not you have.
Yes. So I think your response comes the closest. It's what you give off. It's what you exude. It's how you come across. It has a lot to do with how you are perceived by others, right? So executive presence is about the level of confidence that you inspire in other people as it pertains to your ability to execute and influence, okay? And it's important to note it is not one size fits all, so keep that in mind. The way I exude executive presence is going to look different than the way each of you bring forth executive presence. It's going to be somewhat different for each person. There are 4 key pillars: communication, connection, character, and consistency. Consistency is the base that underlies all of those things. So let's talk about them. Communication is pretty straightforward. It's the exchange and sharing of information and receiving information. There are some key traits that really support this. One is active listening. Activeness listening is demonstrated by your body language, how you lean in, by the verbal signals you're giving as you listen. Clear and concise messaging. And I do want to pause here because I think clear and concise messaging is something that, as I've noticed, anthropologists have a little bit of a tough time with. And I think that is because we think about complexities, we think about grays, we think about all those shades of gray. And something that's very important with executive presence is that ability to trim down what you're saying, to get to the heart of the message, and to do so in an impactful, engaging way. So I do want to call that out for us as an anthropological family. Confidence, that is so very important. How do you get stakeholders to believe in you and what you're doing if you're not exuding confidence yourself? Decisiveness is absolutely key, and composure, even in the most difficult, stressful, and conflict-oriented situations. Composure is of the utmost importance when it comes to executive presence. And all of these things together help you build credibility. Any questions? Reactions? Yes.
I completely agree with the clear and concise messaging. As an undergrad student who just finished a research seminar, I definitely wish professors were more direct with feedback and advice versus spiraling.
Yeah. I think it's an opportunity in our discipline. I taught a seminar recently for a graduate anthropology seminar at a particular university. And I asked everyone to go around the room and say what was the thing that they liked the most about research. And one of the students, they were struggling with what they were saying, and they start off, well, I really like this. And they went on a long soliloquy. And then I really like this other thing. And then there's a third thing. I said, wait, I asked you, what is the one thing you like the most? Let's be clear, concise, and decisive about what we're going to say. And so that's an opportunity for us in our discipline, I think. Okay, connection. This is about how you are relating to other people. And this ties into emotional intelligence, the ability to read a room. It ties into your ability to forge and maintain commitments to other peoples and groups of people, your efficacy in providing value that is cherished and appreciated, and how you go about sharing gratitude and thankfulness to others. And all of these things help foster meaningful relationships and help you secure advocacy. Advocacy is of critical importance in navigating a career. Without advocacy, it doesn't matter whether you're working in a nonprofit, in a government institution, or in business, your career can only go so far. And same with academia, without advocacy. Character. And these are your moral qualities. Authenticity and being true to who you are is I can't even stress how important it is. Integrity, making sure that the people that you're interacting with in a professional setting know that they can trust you, that you have their best interests at heart, that they don't have to worry or you're going to go behind them and undermine them or stab them in the back. And being dependable, knowing that you say you're going to meet a certain deadline, you're going to do something to a certain level of quality by a certain date, that people can have faith that you're going to do that consistently. And all of these things foster not only trust, but respect. And respect is not a word that we talk about a lot, but respect, please don't underestimate its importance in professional contexts. Any questions? No? Okay. So we're going to take turns in the room practicing executive presence. Woohoo! I know you guys love practicing. All right, so I'm going to ask Victoria. Let's pretend you and I don't know each other. Victoria and I are actually colleagues, but for the sake of today, let's just pretend you don't know me, and I'm going to ask you to ask me what do I do for a living. So just pretend you don't know. Ask me what I do for a living, and I'm going to share with you guys how to give a quick elevator pitch in 30 seconds or less of who you are and what you do. So go, just ask me what I do.
Hi, Alice, what do you do for a living?
Oh, Victoria, it is so nice to meet you. So I'm actually a researcher and an anthropologist. I own a company called ADM Insights and Strategy, and our company is unique because we conduct market research with an anthropological lens. And by taking the best of both disciplines and putting it together, it enables us to secure greater human centricity and depth of understanding for our clients, both in nonprofit and in business. I understand you live in DC. I would love for the two of us to get together and have lunch sometime and talk about our work as anthropologists. You see how short and tight that was, right? Like I just cut to the chase. I was very clear about the unique value that I and my company bring, what sets us apart from other people, what sets us apart from other anthropologists, what sets us apart from other market researchers. I was very clear, we do nonprofit and business. So she knows the types of things she can come to us with. And I also made sure to close it with the next step. Let's get together for lunch in DC, right? Because you're trying to move things forward. Again, whether you're in academia, whether you're in nonprofit, government, or business, when you're managing your career, because your career is something to manage, and to manage actively, you want to be hands-on about moving your career forward. So I'm going to ask you guys to pair up in twos around the room. And once you pair up, I'm going to time you guys. And you're going to have 30 seconds to give your elevator pitch. And then the person who listened is going to give you 30 seconds of feedback. Right? And then you're going to rotate. So pair up. And once I see that everyone's paired up, I'll start the stopwatch. Yes. All right, I'm going to start your stopwatch. You have 30 seconds. 1, 2, 3. It's going. That's 30 seconds. All right. So the person who just listened, you give feedback to the person who was talking. You only have 2 more seconds left to get feedback. to switch. So hopefully you have 30 seconds to give your pitch. You got feedback for 30 seconds, and now you're going to reverse. Okay. So you have 30 seconds to give your elevator pitch. I'm going to tell you to stop. And then the other person who was listening gives you feedback for 30 seconds. Are you ready? Okay. Hold on. 1, 2, 3. All right. You're listening now, you need to give feedback to the person who just gave their pitch. You have 30 seconds to give them feedback.
So I guess this.
Okay, fine. Fine. Okay, time's up. So let's come back to the room. Your time's up. Your time's up. The person just walked away. They're not listening to you anymore. Okay, so how did that feel? I heard nerve-wracking. What else? How did it feel?
Yeah.
So you were ready. That's great. So this was easy for you. Okay. So timeline was a little difficult, but you knew your message. Okay. Yes.
I think it feels difficult to want something from another person.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
I think that going into a conversation with this idea, and I know we all do this every time we converse and even like engage as humans, but it's like going into a conversation with direct attention to this.
Good point. And I love that you raised great points. It's such a good point, and I think it's something that a lot of us struggle with. At least I really struggle with. And it's made it hard to be a business owner, right? Because the idea of like calling someone saying, hire us, it just feels weird to always have this goal of I want to get X, Y, Z out of you versus just human interaction. But I will tell you, you have to actively manage your career. And if you don't push things forward, you won't necessarily get things to move forward. And I'm going to say something, and please don't take this the wrong way, you're the only guy in the room. But that's especially true for us. So you have to be, even though it's uncomfortable, you have to figure out a way to push through past the discomfort and make it happen. So I'll give you guys a story. Even today, there's a gentleman from the AAA who spoke earlier, Daniel, right? I do not, it is so out of my nature, my natural nature, to go on and say, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to get this person to lunch with me so we can network because I'm trying to accomplish X, Y, Z. That is just so uncomfortable to me. Because I was like, hey, this dude lives in DC, I live in DC. I have to write another article for the AAA this year. I should have lunch with him. So I made myself go up and be like, hey, we go to the DC. I talk about neighborhoods, talk about what he does, what I do, and we're having lunch next month. Awkward as hell for me. But I know that it's important for me as I'm managing my career as an anthropologist, and I gotta write some more stuff. So I need to do this. I have lunch set up with another person for the AAA from Anthropology News. I need to keep networking. So I agree with you. It's awkward as hell, isn't it? But it's something that's important for us to do. Yes.
I also, like, and not that I even can think of a good example for myself, when that bullet point of explaining what you want.
Yes.
And I have this difficulty personally as well as for anybody else when it comes to having to explain that and feeling it's transactional. when you want it to be. But isn't there a way that you can get to that bullet point, so to speak, by just like more vaguely saying what you want?
So I would say, everyone's style is different, and you have to figure out what works for you and your style and what you're comfortable with. And I will say, doing it vaguely and more subtly works better in some cultures and for some types of organizations than others, right? So I have found in interacting with nonprofit partners, the subtle piece works a little bit better. But in working with the Fortune 500, subtle doesn't apply. So in working with Fortune 500s, we need to be very clear. This is what I want. Let's schedule a meeting for the next 2 weeks. But working with our nonprofit partners, it's easier to do this subtle approach. So I think it's about knowing your audience and also knowing yourself and your own style.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just found that, and that is a challenge for me, is knowing your audience. It's so important to know who you're talking to, because you feel, that I tend to people think, oh, I'm so interested, everything about me is great. Which part do I have to then sell in that conversation? So that if I know that if she's a professor in company, I will pitch a more academic part of myself versus what. So again, how do we do that? We come on before this conversation. So again, our pre-homework, our context, our anthropology, what happens before most of the solvents, yeah.
And I love it, that homework is so important. Like anytime I know I'm going to interact with someone, I'm doing LinkedIn reconnaissance like you would not believe.
Yeah.
Like I'm searching out their LinkedIn, I'm looking to know who else we know in common, where do they go to school, where do we work. If there's someone they know in common and I post that person, I'm picking up the phone beforehand. Hey girl, what's this stuff on so and so? And finding out in advance. Yes.
So we should have like two different pitch. One that, like, for example, we come into this conference, so we know that we have the same background, we can pitch certain stuff. Versus meeting a random person on the elevator and just giving you a pitch about whatever they want to nonprofit.
I need to have multiple pitches, right? So like I have a pitch for any time I'm in a business context. That's my pretty straightforward pitch. I have a different pitch for because I'm oftentimes in these contexts that are provided positions, right? As a person who identifies as a Black Pan-Africanist, I do a lot of work with Black and Latino constituents. And so my pitch in that context is very different than my pitch when I'm with a whole bunch of fellow social scientists. And my pitch when I'm in the business world is different as well. So I think you're gonna have different pitches for different contexts. Great conversation, you guys. I'm probably gonna get in trouble because I'm supposed to stay still, they told me. So you guys have to support me afterwards and say that I had a good reason to move around. All right, let's see. So question for you, we're gonna move to the second topic for today, and that's project management. When you all think about project management, what aspect of project management do you think is the most important? Effective communication, okay. You don't have to raise your hand, just shout out.
Understanding your stakeholders.
Knowing your stakeholders, okay.
Establishing roles and responsibilities.
Roles and responsibilities, okay. Being on time, okay. These are all really good things. Nice. Anything else?
I mean, the fact that if you're a nonprofit like me, the grant management.
Grants.
The project management.
Yeah, that's very time consuming. Yeah. Anything else? All right, so here's what we're gonna do. Let's talk through some things. So I want you to imagine, this is a very real scenario. We have a large client, they're a multinational client. They're one of the largest tech companies in the world. And this client came to me a while back and said, Autumn, and again, this is a client we've done work for in the past. And said, I want to do some research with you and your company to better understand two diasporas around the world. I want to understand the Indian diaspora and I want to understand the West African diaspora. And I want you and your team to do the field work in the UK, Nigeria, India, US. I'm missing a country, UK, Nigeria, India, US. And so that's what the client gave me. When you hear that from your client, what is the very first thing that you do? Again, this is a client that's already yours. You don't have to win them. They're already yours. You've done work for them in the past. They love you. What is the very first thing you do when your client says this to you?
Why?
Why? You ask them why. Okay. And I'm going to say, absolutely. The very first thing you do is you seek to understand more. That is anytime, I don't care how much a partner tells you. And again, we do work with nonprofits and with multinationals. No matter what they tell you up front, it could be a 10-page brief. It could be a 1-page brief. It could be the short little paragraph. Regardless, your first step is to seek to understand more, because there's always more that's not in the brief, or there's always more that's not in what they just shared with you. So sound research design is grounded in an understanding of what needs to be learned and evaluated. It's grounded in knowing how the prioritized research is going to be leveraged to drive action and impact. It's knowing the resources that you have available to you to conduct the research. And it's knowing who are all the stakeholders involved, what is their position, both in terms of the organization, but what is their position on key topics? Is there conflict involved that you have to be aware of as you're navigating the research, conducting your field work, and sharing your results? So with all of this, my face is blocking the thing. How do you go about determining which research methods to use? Now, everyone in this room is an experienced anthropologist. So when you're working, and if you're thinking about managing projects to the best of your ability, managing projects in an ideal manner, how do you go about determining what research methods to use? Say that again?
I would first try to understand what the endpoint is. What is it you want to know?
The endpoint?
How you get there.
Okay, the endpoint, yeah. What else?
The timeline.
Okay, endpoint, budget, timeline. Yep. What else? The outcome, okay. The outcome they're seeking, you mean? Okay,
If you go with the timeline and the budget.
timeline, budget,
the
yep.
Resources.
Resources, got it. Anything else?
There's the timing, it's on timeline, budget, and scope.
Timeline, budget, scope. Okay, you guys are right along there. So I'm going to share with you something. We call it the 5 points model. And this is what our company calls it. I can tell you in 27 years of doing research, the 5 points model has never failed me. The 5 points model, you can do any research you can ever imagine. Literally 6 continents, 27 years. I have always used the 5 points model, and I've never encountered an issue for which I could not develop a study. Okay, so one, the first point is learning objectives. What is it that your partners or your client, what is it that they want to learn? What is it that they need to understand? What is it that they need to evaluate? That's the first point. The second point is the indicated action. How are they going to use the research results and the findings? Now, this is so important in many, many ways. But one of the ways that's important is it helps you understand the risk level of the research, right? So for example, it helps you think about if you're doing quantitative risk of research, to what extent you have to manage alpha risk versus beta risk in designing for your statistics. It helps you understand what kind of sample size you need. So if you are doing research for a nonprofit, and that nonprofit is going to go and develop claims advertising that they're going to put on TV for that nonprofit. If they're doing claims advertising that goes on TV, legally, you have to have a base size of 300. If their claims advertising for nonprofit is only going to go on social media or digital, legally to stand up in court, you only need a base size of 250. But that's where those indicated actions come in. If you don't have that perspective, you could say, you know what, I think that base size of 100 is good for my nonprofit. It's a pair comparison test. If that goes to court, you have a problem. So the indicated actions are of the utmost importance. Yes.
Could you say another example?
Oh, there's tons. So for example, we just did work for an international nonprofit that is focused on addressing job insecurity. And they're going to use the research findings we gave them to change some of their go-to-market models of how they interact with people in communities. So, and I can only say so much because it's confidential. But the research findings we gave are going to literally change in a variety of cities across the United States how they interact with people in those communities.
Okay.
And also not just how they interact with the people that are looking for jobs, but also how they get funding from financial donors.
And how does that indicator action affect what your research is on?
So because we knew that they needed to affect action with multiple stakeholders, we knew we had to interview funders, people who give money, in addition to people who are job insecure, unemployed or underemployed. We also needed to interview people who donate goods as well, because they take the goods that are donated to them and turn that into revenue, obviously. So if we didn't know that they were trying to create marketing and tactical plans for all three constituent groups, we might have just interviewed one of those groups instead of all three. And so because of that, we did qualitative semi-structured interviews with those three groups. We also did a quantitative segmentation study with 6,500 people that span those three groups as well. Yeah. Does that help a little
Yeah,
bit?
it does.
Okay. Awesome. Time and money. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Has any of these things happened in like different orders, or does it always happen like in the
Oh.
order basically?
So I think about it in this order because for me, learning objective is where it all starts. Like if I know your time and money, but I don't know what you're trying to learn, that's useless for me. So for me, it's like, I first need to know what you're trying to learn. And that kind of starts narrowing down the research methods for me. Then your indicated actions narrow it down further. And then your budget can narrow it down a lot. And your time can narrow it. Because if you can give me 242,000, or versus 20,000, that changes the whole world and the type of research I could do. And then stimuli is a little less critical in knowing the stimuli. The big three are the first row, okay? And then the second row are helpful, and I always get them, but they're a little less critical. Does that make sense? Because we all have fielded research without stimuli, all of us. But we've all probably fielded research with stimuli. Stimuli includes, you know what, we need to see if these water tabs that we're offering to this community that doesn't have clean water, do these water tabs really work well in this community culturally? We need to see, do these fake flowers that we want to sell at Michael's, do they sell? Do people like these fake flowers? So we need to expose people to fake flowers. We need to see when people use this pen, does it meet their needs? We're going to ship a bunch of pens to people's homes and have them use them for a week. We're going to show people some ads. Do they like the ads? Those are stimuli. Yep. And then key stakeholders. How junior are they? How senior are they? Senior people want information quick and to the point. Junior people are willing to like wade in the details a little bit more. Do the stakeholders agree? Because you could be walking into a hotbed with your research and not know it. And so you want to know that in advance and how you design your research so that you don't encounter a lot of resistance on the back end to your research findings. So in terms of the project team, once you know the 5 points and you've developed your research methodology, it's really important to think about who should sit on this team. And that's going to be determined by the research methodology and all of the other kind of pitfalls that you have to think about. So whether or not you need qualitative research, quantitative researchers, do you need other anthropologists in addition to yourself? Do they need to be a different type of anthropologist? So for example, Victoria and I worked together at the same company. And we had a project on our team this past fall where a healthcare company out of Scandinavia hired us for something. Well, Victoria is a medical anthropologist. I am not. So it was of the utmost importance to have Victoria write the discussion guide and not me, because this is a healthcare company. So making sure I had another anthropologist that had a different type of experience than I did. Do we need other people from the social sciences? And then do you need market research, UX? Do you need R&D? Are you doing something related to product? Then you probably need R&D. Do you need analytics? Because do you need to do volume forecasting? Do you need to do revenue forecasting? Marketing, finance, if there's anything related to revenue, P&L or forecasting, you probably need finance. And depending on the risk level, do you have someone from legal counsel on your research project team? Because if you're doing something that has a fair risk level, you probably want to pull in legal counsel to your research team. How many of you have used these different functions on your research teams? One hand goes up. Okay. Something to think about. Whether you're leading the team or whether you're just a member of the team, you still have the opportunity to influence to drive the optimal team structure. Okay, and then working on a team. These are some tips. This is my perspective leading teams, research teams. I first began leading research teams in 1997. I've led teams in North America, Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. Oh, have I led teams in Europe? My bad. So the only place where I haven't actually led personnel is Australia. And so working across these geographies, what I found works really well is having standing meetings. And how frequently those meetings need to occur will depend on the complexity of the project and the speed with which you have to work. If you have a project that, okay, you've got 52 weeks to get it done, that's entirely different than if you have a project where you've got to get in and out of field in 72 hours and then issue a research report 48 hours later, right? But set up standing meetings to make that possible. Training is especially important with semi-structured interviews. And if you're bringing together multiple anthropologists, oh my word, we all do interviews differently. And you have to have some kind of consistency. And so we've literally developed training at our company to ensure that as we bring anthropologists from other lines of thought and other countries together, we're all conducting the interviews with some level of consistency because you don't want to create bias in the research results. Collaboration tools, make sure you align to those up front. If you have people that are really used to using the Google Suite, another group of people that are accustomed with Dropbox, you need to be sure that everyone is familiar with the remote collaboration tools. And accountability components are key when managing a project. You need to be explicitly clear on who's responsible for what and when. And to the extent possible, tie that to compensation factors. One, so that there's no question about what success looks like, what failure looks like, but also so people understand the implications of success and failure. And then managing the client. I think a lot of times people think that clients manage the consultants or that employers manage their employees. But let me tell you, as someone, I've led research functions worldwide at 2 companies. And the people who reported to me managed me as much as I managed them. So always keep in mind, no matter what position you're in, you have the opportunity to manage your client, your boss, whoever it is. And so one of the best pieces of advice that I got years ago was from a fellow researcher at Procter & Gamble. And she was training me and she said, Autumn, always under promise, over deliver. One of the best pieces of advice, and I still use it today. So for example, we had a client who told me a few months ago, we need the research results from you and your team no later than end of January. So I looked at it and I was like, oh, my team and I can get this done, no problem, before January 27th. I told the client, you'll have it late night, January 31st. So then when we delivered it January 25th, they just thought that we were the best thing since cheesecake. But we knew all along we could do that. That's under promising and over delivering. And then hold standing meetings with your client throughout the life of a project because perception is reality. Remember that perception is reality. You could be working like crazy. You could be doing phenomenal work. Your research design could be the best research design. It could be flawless. You're moving at a rapid pace. But if the client does not sense, that, if your business partners do not sense that, that's not the reality they're going to internalize, and that's not how they're going to evaluate you or your work. So hold standing meetings, and this might be uncomfortable for some folks. But use those standard meetings to advertise yourself and what you're doing, because perception is reality. And also, to make your life easier, help your business partners and your clients understand the implications of their mistiming. If they need to get you stimuli for you to take out to your field site by a certain date, and they don't get you that stimuli until 2 days later, but they expect your field work to start and end on the same date, let them know at the start of the project that's not going to happen. If they get you stimuli 2 days late, then field work is going to be delayed by a minimum of 2 days, depending on what else you have going on in your life and what other projects you might have. But do that up front, because not doing that will make your life and your career extremely difficult. Any questions? I'm smiling under here, but you guys just can't see it. Any questions? All right. Okay, and then the last thing is the creation of the deliverables. I cannot begin to tell you guys how many times I've seen the most beautiful research, flawless methodological design, perfect execution, and then it falls flat. And it falls flat because of the deliverable at the end. So here's what I suggest is, everyone in here is an anthropologist. We are experts at studying people. Study your client. Know your client intimately. Just like you might study a community or an organization, study your client. Make them your research subject and know them inside and out. Know their values, know their rituals, know their cultures. And part of that is, when you think about a research report, what format do they want in it? Know this up front. And I will tell you, this is something that took me a while to realize. I want to know that at the start of a project, not at the end, because that affects even how you collect your data. It affects even how you structure questions that you're going to ask. Do they want a 15-page PowerPoint that's very much executive top line? Or are they very detail oriented and they're going to want a 130-page PowerPoint? Or are they going to want something that's very academic and scholarly? We have a client who all they want is academic scholarly reports. And so it's pretty much like we're writing a thesis or dissertation every single time. We've never given them a report that's less than 100 pages in Word and fewer than 65 sources cited, every research report. We have another client where if you give them more than 15 pages PowerPoint, they're like, oh, this is too intense. It's too much for us. So know your client and know their stylistic preferences. We have a client who they never want video footage in any report, ever. They don't want to see the video footage of people being interviewed. We have other clients who, if you do not include that video footage, you have failed. Now we have other clients, they don't care about seeing videos of the people interviewed, but they want sizzle. They want pizzazz. So you've got to embed some kind of music and flash and moving objects. Know your client's stylistic preferences and know the stakeholders of focus and know their hot buttons. Because the last thing you want when you're presenting results is you're going in there as an anthropologist, being very true to the results. And what you don't know is that that nonprofit has a chief growth officer, and that nonprofit has a chief operating officer who are in total disagreement about your project. And you walk in to present your results and the room explodes. So know in advance all of those politics and all of those dynamics about the stakeholders of focus. So now it's your turn. I'm going to share with you on this next page an email. I have not edited. I just took out the brand names for confidentiality. This is an email that was sent to me not that long ago. And I'll let you read it. And you tell me what you would do. Once you've read it and you have thoughts, just start shouting them out.
N equals 6.
I'm sorry, speak up.
N equals 6.
Okay, so what did it tell me? I
To
don't,
me, that's what that's. And that's.
okay, so that's a small base size to you.
That's a very small sample size, yeah.
Okay, so your reaction is small sample size.
Feeling what you're trying.
So you get this email. My question to you is, you're a researcher. They're sending this to you because they know you're an experienced researcher. This is the email you get. What do you do?
I would push back and say if they increase it, maybe 10 or 15.
You're pushing back. Do you know their budget?
No,
Do you know their time?
no,
So how are you going to push back? Do you know whether they can afford to do more?
no.
Okay.
I would push back if I set up a meeting, try to find out more information.
Okay, set up a meeting. So here's the deal. When you send it out back, you get a message saying, and you sent this, if you received that, I think it was around 6:30 p.m. I received that. You send a note back about 8. They're like, oh yeah, our timing on this is really tight. We need your thing by noon tomorrow morning. Tomorrow. So now what do? This is a real situation. They needed my bid, they needed my research proposal, and my costs. Noon the next day. I got this email at 6:37 p.m. What do you do?
Personally, I wouldn't take it. If there's not enough time to develop a responsible pitch, to know what you're getting into, the budget, and that sounds to me like a client who might be very problematic. That kind of time frame seems potentially.
How many of you say you wouldn't take it? Okay, so I'm gonna tell you something. This is common in business. If you're gonna work in business, this is very common. And if the reaction is, I'm not gonna take it, you're gonna say no to a lot of work. Okay? Business moves fast. Very, very fast. And you have to be able, remember I said one of the skill sets up front was risk taking? Risk taking is an important skill set. Let me tell you how I reacted. I said, okay, it's now 8 p.m. I have to have a proposal done and to her by noon. Uh-oh. Here we go. So let me clarify the points I need to clarify. 1, what's your bullseye budget? So I have some idea of what I'm working with. 2, I noticed you use the word Black in one sentence and you use the word African-American in another. And you've also got Hispanic. Who do you really want to study? And then they're like, oh, is there a difference between Black people and African-American? I'm like, yeah. So that was a moment for educating, right? Like to help them understand that. They came back, they gave me a budget. They told me when the research needed to happen. And I asked a few more questions and I was like, okay, help me understand what is the brand? I think the brand is XYZ. Is that the case? The Hispanic research, are you including Afro-Latinos in the Hispanic research, or do I need to include them in the Black sample? I went through all of this with them. I got my answers that night. So then the next morning I woke up. I knew I was looking at scenario of 6, and I understand your concern about 6, but 6 is, keep in mind, it's qualitative. They're not making legal claims on this. This is exploratory work. And they were going to do 6 with whatever they thought Black people were. And they were going to do 6 with how they were defining Hispanic as well. So it was going to be 12 interviews in total. Okay. And we did the interviews and we got great learnings. It was can't tell you guys, it's a brand that I would venture. Many of you guys, all of you probably have a product from the parent company in your home. It's a very large consumer packaged goods company. And we did the research and I made a quick $10,000. I worked for one day and I made $10,000 in one day. And I gave them a whole bunch of information about Black people that they never understood. And I helped them understand, because as an anthropologist, of course, I not only do the interviews, but I do literature review as well. Give me just a second, I'll come to you. So I also help them understand how certain archetypes, like the superwoman archetype, plays a role in the Black community. I help them understand how hair ties to self-esteem, specifically for college-age Black women. All of these things that they never understood before. I help them understand that the Black community is composed of African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Africans, and Afro-Latinos in the United States. So in a short amount of time, I educated this company who just had no clue about Blacks in the United States. I helped them walk away with a deeper human-centric understanding of Black people. And I made enough money to pay my mortgage and my medical bills for the month. And being a brain tumor survivor, medical bills are really important to me. So if I had just said, nope, you guys won't meet with me tomorrow, I'm not willing to do your work, think about what it would have been lost. You had your hand.
Communicate with you throughout the night. So you were getting.
Yeah, email. But it's very common, and it's very common nowadays. People aren't going to carve out time to meet with you, especially if you're dealing with senior people. And when I was at Revlon running the entire research function worldwide, I wasn't going to make time to meet with people. I don't have time. And if you can't communicate with me via email, what does that tell me about your communication skills? Right? Like that gives me concerns as a senior leader if you're not able to communicate effectively in writing on quick timing. Yes, your hand was up.
Is there is no report needed, but how do you deliver the results?
Fantastic. I'm glad you asked that because that's a real scenario. Thank you for asking that. So their team wrote the report and then they sent me the report, the drafts, to say, Autumn, what is everything we have to change in the report? What are all the things we have to change? What needs to be edited? What needs to be revised? And so I went through the whole report and I said, okay, technically this finding is correct, but you're not addressing the deeper cultural issue here among Black people. You're not talking about this point. Or they made some comment about Eurocentric beauty ideals without talking about the shift that has happened in the Black community about reclaiming Afrocentricity in beauty ideas. So that's part of what I was referring to is they wrote the report. My job was to help them understand Black people in the United States at a deeper cultural level than they were capable of. And so the report that ultimately went to the client had all of that in there. Again, I'm smiling, but you can't see that right now. Yes.
Like, would you have concern if like you if you didn't know that they were gonna come down to you with that report? Like, is that something that's in your contract, or you just say you hope that they do that?
So here's the great thing, and all of you have this as an asset. I would pretty much, not even pretty much, every company that comes to us, to Victoria and I and our colleagues, they're coming to us because they know we're anthropologists, because they know we're social sciences, and they're going to get a little extra sauce out of us that they can't get from other people, and they want that. That's why they come to us. That's why they pay us more than they pay other market researchers. So I really don't have to worry about that because I know that's part of why they're hiring us. Yes.
You find that sort of as part of like you work with these people so you knew. But
Yeah.
in general, you have like a contract or something.
It's factored into our price. It's factored into the labor always. Because I know that if I was just to do regular market researchy stuff, it would be a lot faster for us. But bringing the anthropological expertise, one, that's dollar value that we're bringing. And so all of us are worth more. And we need to be compensated for that. And it's also time. You know, as anthropologists, we're taking qualitative data and we're coding it. We're looking for themes. We're tying that back to theory. Market researchers don't do that. And I say that, you know, I am a market researcher and an anthropologist. As a market researcher, we don't do that. Question, yeah.
Can I ask a slightly different question?
Yeah.
Maybe? I think this is so interesting. That you shared. I teach a lot of undergraduates, right?
Cool, very cool.
Thinking about how to apply their anthropology skills. And I think, you know, what you've laid out here is really appealing to so many people. But you have a wealth of experience and years, you know.
I'm old, yeah.
We're probably pretty similar. So what kind of advice would you give folks who are undergraduate graduation at that age right now for sort of moving in this direction?
So they're undergrads in anthropology, and so they don't have work experience.
They may have worked, they may have worked throughout, their undergraduate careers,
Yeah.
but likely not doing this kind of work.
So I think one, it comes down to, and this ties to the conversation that the three of us were having a little bit right before we started. What do they want for themselves in their lives, right? Because we all want different things, you know. If they want to have a life, you know, helping people with illnesses, and that's a particular path. If they want to have a life where they are advocating for marginalized communities, that's a different life. If they have a life where they want to create new products every year. So I think it depends on what it is that they want to do. And then what I would suggest is find a client side role in that field. And I'm intentionally stressing client side very purposefully, because the type of training you're going to get, and also the type of compensation you're going to get on client side is going to be very different than on the non-client side. And that's, again, whether you're advocating for addressing health disparities or helping marginal, go client side. That would be my advice. No problem. So question for you guys, because we only have 3 minutes left and we haven't started the third section of this. And the third section is a module on qualitative interviewing. And real talk, I basically took a 3-week training and I crammed it into like 12 minutes. So do you guys want to, I can fly through it in like 2 minutes, or would you rather do a follow-up session on qualitative interviewing? So show of hands, who wants to do 2 minutes, quickie? Okay, who wants to do a follow-up session? All right, we'll do a follow-up session. So let me give you guys, let's just do this. Does everyone have a mobile phone?
Yes.
All right, so as you guys walk out, you can tap your phone and you'll get my digital business card. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and then for shoot me an invite for LinkedIn, and for everyone who sends me a LinkedIn invite from out of this workshop, I will set up a separate private module for you guys on qualitative interviewing. Is that cool? All right, awesome. So I'll leave it here and you can tap on your way out. If you have an iPhone, you can tap. If you don't have an iPhone, you can QR code snap. Okay? Thank you guys so very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.